Hello there, adventurers, and welcome to Wally DM. In the 5th edition Player's Handbook on page 160 is a D100 table of trinkets. Now, trinkets are simple items lightly touched by mystery. Our characters could start off with one at first level, and it could be part of their backstory or something given to them by a relative. As a DM, we can also include trinkets as small pieces of treasure or items found when they search something. Now, I have recently started a Waterdeep Dragon Heist campaign, and one of the cool features in Chapter 1 is Old Xoblob's shop. As the characters are on their way to the Skewer Dragon to investigate the disappearance of Floon, there is a shop that is highlighted in purple with a stuffed beholder in the window. Now, the gnome that owns the shop has an assortment of trinkets. As the characters search the shelves or look about the shop, the DM is to roll on the trinket table in the player's handbook to determine an item that catches their eye. And of course, Old Xoblob's shop, everything is purple. So each character will be drawn to a purple item in the shop. But as a DM, rather than use the player's handbook list of trinkets, I went out and I found a third-party source. Actually, I already knew of it, and I used it instead. In fact, that is NERZUGAL'S Game Master Toolkit. And inside the Game Master Toolkit is a brand new D100 table of trinkets. So I decided to use those. And in addition to using those, I also used NERZUGAL'S Dungeon Master Toolkit to add some magical effects to these trinkets. So what I'd like to do in today's video is use these resources to randomly generate 2 trinkets with magical properties. And then after that, I'd like to share with you the trinkets that we rolled up in my campaign for Dragon Heist and the hilarious effects that they're still having on our game today. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's roll up 2 random trinkets with magical effects out of the NERZUGAL'S Dungeon Master Toolkit. Okay, so let's go ahead and roll up our first trinket. 67. A quill that causes words written with it to glow when in darkness. That is pretty cool. And of course, if we're going to use this in Old Xoblob's shop, this would be a purple quill. Okay, so we have our trinket, which is our quill. And what I'd like to do now is attach 2 enhancements or 2 magical effects to them. And in NERZUGAL'S Dungeon Master Toolkit, he has 8 different D100 charts. And 4 of them are positive or beneficial effects, and 4 of them are detrimental or negative effects. And honestly, I don't know if NERZUGAL planned this because the trinkets are in one book and the random item enhancements are in the other, but they work very, very well together, and that's why I enjoyed making a few of these up. And since they are just trinkets and not magical items, what I like to do when I create these is I give them 1 beneficial effect and 1 detrimental effect. And of course, these trinkets, for these 2 enhancements to work, they need to be attuned to the character. So I hope that gets all the rules out of the way. Oh, and one more thing. Each out of the 4 beneficial tables and the 4 detrimental tables, they're broken down into 4 let's say power levels. There's lesser, medium, major, and legendary. So we can create some very powerful items. But for first level characters, let's go with the lesser to begin with. So we have our quill. Let's give it a couple of effects. Our first one, randomly determined, is the beneficial effect, and I rolled a 35. While attuned to this item, you have resistance to radiant damage. A tiny angelic creature follows you around. Okay, so that's pretty cool. We're now attuned to our quill, and we have resistance to radiant damage. And we have this little angel that follows us around. That's pretty neat. All right, so now let's give it a detrimental effect. 86. While attuned to this item, you become allergic to the next food you eat. You have horrible sneezing fits when it is nearby and become sickened for 6 hours after you eat it. So that's pretty cool. So now we have a quill, and whatever we write with this quill will glow in the dark. So that's pretty neat. As a beneficial effect of being attuned to it, we are resistant to radiant damage and have this little angel creature that follows us around. And as a detrimental or a negative side effect of being attuned to it, if we go to the tavern and have some quipper and chips, then we develop a food allergy for as long as we're attuned to the quill, and we no longer like quipper and chips because we're now allergic to it. So really cool little magic item that you can give to first level players, or if you're playing Dragon Heist, a purple quill with some cool magical effects that they can purchase in old Xoblob shop. Okay, let's randomly generate one more. So we'll roll on the D100 table. 93. 1/2 of a glass heart decoration that has been split down the center. So that's pretty cool. We have half of a glass heart. Now we're going to make this one a little bit more powerful. We're going to go into the major beneficial effects. We won't go all the way to legendary, but let's do major. So a percentile roll, 91. While attuned to this item, whenever you are in the sunlight, your proficiency bonus is increased by 1. You may also cast daylight once per day, which also activates this effect. Now that's pretty darn cool. So our little half of a glass heart, we get a +1 to our proficiency bonus as long as we're out in the sunlight. And if we are out at nighttime or down in a dungeon, we can cast daylight, and as long as daylight is in effect, we also get that +1 to our proficiency bonus. Okay, so now let's give our half a glass heart a negative or detrimental effect. And the number I rolled is a 78. While attuned to this item, you make animal handling checks with disadvantage. Okay, so there you go. We have a half a glass heart that, as long as we're attuned to it and out in the daylight, we get a +1 to our proficiency bonus. But if we need to make any types of animal handling checks, we do so with disadvantage. And of course, again, if you're running Dragon Heist, this would be half of a purple glass heart. So another really cool item that we can include in our game. Now, before we go, I'd like to share a couple of the stories that came out of the trinkets that we created in our Waterdeep Dragon Heist campaign. So all 4 of our characters went into old Xoblob shop, they looked around, and they were drawn to an item. And so what I did for this part of the game was had all 4 of them roll a percentile or D100 3 times to get the effects. 1 for the trinket, and then 2 for the random magical enhancements. And the first one that I'm going to bring up is Miralith, and Miralith is played by Steven, and he is also known by NERZUGAL'S. So this was really cool for me while we're in old Xoblob shop, and I actually have NERZUGAL playing in our game, and I was able to, I didn't tell him in advance, so we're rolling up these trinkets, and I'm reading them out to him right out of his book, and he had no idea that I was going to do that. So that was really cool, and it's awesome to have him in our game. But NERZUGAL is playing a half-elf wizard by the name of Miralith, and Miralith found a jar of purple gelatinous jelly in old Xoblob shop. And of course, all of our items have the lesser effects to them. So the jar of jelly, for the lesser effect, NERZUGAL actually rolled a 100, and that effect gives him a +1 to spell attack bonus and his spell save DC. So that's pretty neat. And the negative effect is he no longer trusts monks. He always assumes that they are lying. So Miralith is attached to this jar of purple gelatinous jelly that helps his spell attack bonus and save DC, but now he has a total distrust of monks. Nicodemus, who's played by Seraph, he found a small purple painted flower pot. Now this has an effect that Nicodemus does not know yet, so we will explore that later in the game. But as far as a positive effect, the small purple painted flower pot, as long as he's attuned to it, gives him an extra D4 of lightning damage whenever he hits with his rapier. So that's pretty neat. And as a negative effect, all musical instruments within 50 feet of him seem to be out of tune. So poor Nicodemus, whenever he is listening to a bard or maybe a band in a tavern, if he's within 50 feet of this music, it's going to sound terrible. But still a really neat item for him to be attuned to. Now our half-elf druid, his name is Hugin, and Hugin found a musical box, a purple musical box, that plays a lullaby. The beneficial effect of the music box is that he can cast the wizard cantrip Message at will, but the detrimental effect is that he no longer trusts bartenders. He always assumes that they are lying. Now, this really hasn't had an effect to date, but our characters are now on their way back to the Yawning Portal after just rescuing Floon. So it's going to be interesting to see how Hugin handles Durgan in the Yawning Portal now that he no longer trusts bartenders. Our final character is played by Forik, and he is playing an Aasimar Warlock. And as part of Zell's backstory, he was actually raised in the Church of Lathander, and that helps tie into his Aasimar race, and that also helps generate some pretty good backstory. So he has this, so even though he's a warlock with Kalar Argent as his patron, he still has a very strong bond with Lathander, a very strong belief in Lathander. So Zell found a purple chess piece, a bishop to be exact. Now, while Zell is attuned to this purple bishop, he gets an extra D4 of radiant damage on any spell attacks that he uses. So if he uses Witch Bolt, he gets an extra D4 of radiant damage. That's the beneficial. Now, the detrimental effect is while Zell is attuned to this, he now believes that the sun rises in the west and sets in the east. As a believer in the Morning Lord, Forik has really played this character very, very well with this detrimental effect. In fact, in our most recent session, he even went to the Temple of Lathander and he was seeking out guidance from the High Priest there, wondering what is wrong with him, or what is Lathander trying to say to him, and why is the sun rising in the west and setting in the east? And it has played. We've had a ton of jokes about it. We've had a great storyline with it already. And again, just some really cool effects that we're getting in our Waterdeep Dragon Heist campaign, courtesy of the trinkets and the magical enhancements you can find in NERZUGAL'S books. Okay, so that's the trinkets with random enhancements that you can create out of NERZUGAL'S toolkits. And where can you get these? Well, if you head on over to the Dungeon Masters Guild, you can pick up the PDFs. Just search for Stephen Williams or NERZUGAL, and he has 3 different books there. His first one, the Dungeon Master Toolkit, is the one that has the enhancements on it. Now, he does have these set up currently for PDF as a pay what you want. So technically you could get these for free, but it also has a suggested price on there. This one right here is $9.99, and it is worth every bit of that. So if you do go over and download these, be sure to send Steven some money, because they are very much worth it. $9.99, it's not that much. $10 for some stuff that you're going to get a lot of use out of. Not only that, but these books are filled with other random charts, and if you like puzzles, and you're watching this channel, so I assume you do, he has tons of puzzles all written out in book form, so you can use puzzles. He's got magic items, he's got monsters. I mean, Stephen has really done a great job in this trilogy of books, and I suggest getting all of them. And in fact, I'm even starting to pick up the hardbacks. I've got this one, and I'm going to try to get 2 more because it looks beautiful on my shelf and well worth the investment. So that's all I have for you today, and what'd you think? Have you used any of NERZUGAL'S books in the past? And what did you think of the trinkets, especially adding some beneficial or detrimental effects to them? Also, have you played Waterdeep Dragon Heist yet? If so, what kind of cool trinket stories came out of your character's experience in Old Xoblob's shop? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate you watching, and on to the next.